Hello everyone and welcome back to our channel. Today we'll explore the Augustan Age and 18th century literature. There are so many important writers and their works during this period that we can't cover them all in one session. That's why we have decided to split into two parts. So let's start. Our first important writer is Alexander Pope. Alexander Pope was a prominent writer of the Augustan Age and 18th century literature. He is celebrated for his incisive satirical works and eloquent poetry. And here is a list of some of his important. First is The Rape of the Lock. The mock heroic epic poem humorously depicts a travel event, a stolen lock of hair, as an epic battle. It's a brilliant satire on the frivolity of an aristocratic society. Next is The Dunciad, an epic satirical poem that savours the literary incompetence and moral decay of the age. It went through several editions, with the final edition known as the Dunciad in 4 books. Next is An Essay on Criticism, a didactic poem that outlines principles of literary criticism, offering guidance to writers and critics. Next is The Essay on Man, a philosophical poem in 4 epistles that explore the nature, humanity, the universe, and the divine order. Next is The Moral Essays, a series of satirical essays in verse that cover various moral and social issues of the time. Next is The Satires, a collection of satirical poems that lampoon the vices and follies of society. Next is The Iliad. Pope's translation of Homer's Iliad into English heroic couplets is considered a classic of English literature. Friends, Alexander Pope's works are characterized by their wit, satire, and poetic skill. He is often regarded as one of the greatest English poets of the 18th century, and his writings continue to be studied and admired for their enduring literary value. Our next important writer is Jonathan Swift. Jonathan Swift was a prominent writer of the Augustan Age and 18th century literature. He was a satirist and essayist known for his sharp wit and inviting social commentary. Here is a list of some of his notable works. First is Gulliver's Travels. Perhaps Swift's most famous work, the satirical novel follows Lemuel Gulliver on his voyages to various fantastical lands. Through these travels, Swift satires human nature, politics, and society. Next important work is A Modest Proposal. This essay suggests a shocking solution to the problem of overpopulation and poverty in Ireland by proposing that the impoverished Irish population should sell their children as food to the rich. It is a powerful satirical critique of British economic exploitation of Ireland. Next is The Tale of Tub, Swift's first major work. This satirical prose and poetry work explore religious excess and the misuse of learning. Its biting criticism of religious divisions and fanaticism. Next is A Journal to Stella, a series of letters written to Esther Johnson and Rebecca Dingley. These letters provide insight into Swift's personal life, thoughts, and the political climate of the time. Next important work is The Draper's Letters, a series of a pamphlet written under the pseudonym M.B. Draper. These letters were a response to economic exploitation and the imposition of a new devalued coin in Ireland. Next is The Battle of the Books, an essay that satirizes the intellectual conflict between modern and classical writers, exemplifying Swift's wit and humor. Next is verses on the death of a Dr. Swift, a poem where Swift humorously addresses his own morality and imagines how he'll be remembered after his death. Our next important writer is Joseph Addison. Joseph Addison was a key figure in the Augustan Age and 18th century literature, celebrated for his essays, plays, and contribution to English periodicals. And here is a list of some of his important work. First is The Spectator. Addison, along with Richard Steele, co-founded this influential periodical. The publication featured essays and articles on a wide range of topics, including literature, society, morality, and daily life. Addison's contribution, often under the pseudonym Mr. Spectator, were among the most popular and enduring. Next is Cato, a Tragedy. Addison's play Cato was a notable work that reflected the political climate of the time. It was admired for its eloquent language and classic Stoic themes. Next is The Guardian, a periodical similar to The Spectator, in which Addison contributed essays and reflections. Next is The Freeholder. Addison's political periodical addressed political issues and supported the Hanoverian succession to the British throne. Next important work is Essays on Various Subjects, collection of essays on a diverse topic, reflecting Addison's interest and intellectual range. Next is The Drummer or The Haunted House, a comedic play by Addison highlighting his talent for satire. Next is Poetry and Other Poems. Although not as well known for his poetry as his essays, Addison did write poetry, and his verses, often lauding simple and pastoral themes, were well received in his time. Joseph Addison's essays, plays, and periodicals played a pivotal role in shaping the literary landscape of the 18th century. His contribution to The Spectator and other publications were central to the development of the English essay and the spread of polite literature and ideas in this era. Friends, our next important writer is Richard Steele. Richard Steele was a prominent writer of the Augustan Age and 18th century literature, known for his essays, plays, and contribution to the development of English periodicals. And here is the list of some of his important works. First is the Tatler, 1709 to 1711. Co-founded with Joseph Addison, the Tatler was a pioneering periodical featuring essays and articles on various topics, similar to The Spectator. Richard Steele used the pseudonym Isaac Bickerstaff for his contributions. The publication was influential in shaping the English essay form. Next is The Spectator. Steele was a key contributor to the influential periodical, co-founded with Addison. The Spectator included essays and articles on literature, society, morality, and daily life, marked by wit and wisdom. Next is The Guardian. Similar to The Spectator, this periodical also featured Steele's essays and reflections. Next is The Conscious Lovers, Steele's most successful play, known for its sentimental comedy and moral themes. Next important work is The Lying Lover, a comedy play written by Steele that explored themes of deception and intrigue. Next is The Funeral, a farce that satirizes the funeral customs of the time, highlighting Steele's skill in humor. Next is The Christian Hero, a moral and religious work that offers advice on living a virtuous and honorable life. And the last important work is The Crisis, a political pamphlet expressing support for the Hanoverian succession to the British throne. Richard Steele's contribution to the Tatler and the Spectator were particularly significant in shaping the English essay and periodical genres. His writings reflected the values, interests, and intellectual climate of the 18th century, making him a key figure in the literature of time. Our next important writer is Samuel Johnson. Samuel, often referred to as Dr. Johnson, was a prominent writer of the Augustan Age and 18th century literature. He was versatile author, essayist, lexicographer, and critic. And here is a list of some of his important works. First is A Dictionary of the English Language, 1755. Samuel Johnson is perhaps best known for his monumental work. His dictionary was a pioneering effort to compile and define the English language, setting a standard for future dictionaries. It is a testament to his scholarship and literary influence. Next is Rasselas. A philosophical novel, Rasselas tells the story of a young princess' search for the meaning of life and happiness. The work reflects Johnson's moral and philosophical musings. Next is The Vanity of a Human Wishes, a poem that reflects on the futility of a human desire and ambition, often seen as a companion piece to his earlier London. Next is The Lives of the Poets, a collection of critical biographies of 52 poets, including Milton, Pope, and Gray. This work is a significant contribution to literary criticism. Next is the Idler, a series of 103 essays published in periodical, addressing various moral and social issues with Johnson's characteristic wit and wisdom. Next important work is A Journey to the Western Islands of Scotland, a travel act documenting Johnson's journey to the Scottish Highlands, offering reflection on a landscape, culture, and society. Next is London, a poem that describes the bustling and varied life in London, reflecting Johnson's own experience and observations of the city. Next is The Rambler, a series of essays contributed to the periodical of the same time, in which Johnson explored moral, literary, and social topics. Next is The Adventure, another series of essays reflecting Johnson's contribution to the periodical with a focus on moral and literary subjects. Friends, Samuel Johnson's works encompasses a wide range of genres and topics, and his writings have had a lasting impact on English literature, particularly in the realms of lexicography, literary criticism, and essay writing. His influence and intellectual contributions continue to be admired and studied. Our next important writer is James Boswell. James Boswell was a significant writer and biographer of the Augustan Age and 18th century literature. He is best known for his biographical work on the Samuel Johnson, one of the most celebrated figures of the period. And here is a list of some of his notable works with a focus on his most renowned piece. First is The Life of Samuel Johnson. Boswell's most celebrated work, The Life of Samuel Johnson, often referred to as Boswell's Life of Johnson, is a pioneering biographical masterpiece. It provides an intimate and comprehensive portrait of the life and personality and thoughts of the great lexicographer, essayist, and critic Samuel Johnson. The biography is admired for its detailed accounts of Johnson, conversations, opinions, and literary and social milieu of the 18th century. Next is the Journal of a Tour to the Hebrides. This work chronicles Boswell's journey with Samuel Johnson through Scotland, offering insight into Johnson's thoughts, Boswell's admiration for Johnson, and the cultural and geographical aspects of the Scottish Highlands. James Boswell's primary claim to fame lies in his biographical contributions, especially the life of Samuel Johnson, which is regarded as one of the most important biographies in the English language. It continues to be a valuable source for understanding the life and times of Samuel Johnson and the broader literary and intellectual circles of the 18th century. Our next important writer is Edward Gibbon. Edward Gibbon was a prominent writer and historian of the Augustan Age and 18th century literature. He is best known for his monumental work, The History of the Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. And here is a list of some of his important works. First is The History of the Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. Gibbon's magnum opus and one of the most significant historical works in the English language, this extensive 6-volume history chronicles the decline and fall of the Roman Empire, tracing events from the height of the Roman Empire to its eventual collapse. Gibbon's work is renowned for its meticulous research, elegant prose, and critical analysis of historical events. Next is Memoirs of My Life and Writings, an autobiographical work in which Gibbon reflects on his life, including his literary career, travels, and intellectual influences. Friends, Edward Gibbon's legacy primarily revolves around his monumental work, The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. This historical masterpiece remains a cornerstone of the study of Roman history and continues to be esteemed for his scholarship, erudition, and enduring quality of this prose. Next important writer is Thomas Gray. Thomas Gray was a notable poet and writer of the Augustan Age and 18th century literature, celebrated for his elegiac and reflective verses. And here is a list of some of his key works. First is Elegy Written in a Country Churchyard. Perhaps Gray's most famous work, the elegiac poem, contemplates life, death, and the passing of time. It reflects on the lives of ordinary people buried in a rural churchyard and remains one of the most admired and frequently anthologized poems in the English language. Next is Ode on a Distant Prospect of Eton College. In this poem, Gray nostalgically reflects on his time at Eton College and contemplates the fleeting nature of youth and happiness. Next is Ode to Adversity, an ode to that explore the role of adversity in shaping the human spirit and character. Next is The Bard, a narrative poem that tells the story of the last Welsh bard who forces a downfall of his people. The poem was inspired by the 1756 subjugation of the Welsh by English. Next is The Progress of a Poesy, an ode that celebrates the power of poetry and the enduring influence of the classical tradition. Next important work is on the death of a favorite cat drowned in a tub of fishes. A light-hearted and somewhat humorous poem that contrasts the drowning of a cat with the grandeur of a king. Friends, Thomas Gray is celebrated for his elegiac and reflexive poetry, which often contemplates the transience of life, the passage of time, and the enduring power of art and literature. His Elegy Written in a Country Churchyard stands as one of the most cherished and anthologized poems in the English literary canon. Our next important writer is Oliver Goldsmith. Oliver Goldsmith was a versatile writer of the Augustan Age and 18th century literature, known for his poetry, plays, essays, and novels. And here is a list of some of his most significant work. First is The Deserted Village, Goldsmith's most celebrated poem. This work laments the depopulation of rural areas due to industrialization and the displacement of villagers. It reflects on the loss of traditional values and the encroachment of modernity. Next is The Vicar of Wakefield, a novel that tells the story of Dr. Primrose, a benevolent vicar whose family faces various trials and tribulation. It is a classic of 18th century English literature, combining elements of a domestic comedy and moral instructions. Next important work is She Stoops to Conquer, a comic play that satirizes the foibles of the English upper classes and the rural gentry. It is one of Goldsmith's most famous theatrical works. Next is The Citizen of the World, a series of fictional letters from the Chinese traveler, Mr. Lian Chi at Langi, who provides witty and satirical observation on English society and manners. Next important work is The Traveller, a philosophical and reflective poem that explores the theme of travel, human nature, and the search of happiness. Next is The Good-Natured Man, a comedy play that humorously critiques the affections and pretensions of the upper classes. Next is An History of the Earth and Animated Nature, a natural history book that encompasses the animal kingdom, offering scientific knowledge and Goldsmith's observation in an accessible and engaging style. Friends, Oliver Goldsmith's works are characterized by their wit, humor, and moral messages. He was a versatile writer who made significant contribution to the various literary forms, and his writing continued to be appreciated for their charm and insight into the social and cultural life of the 18th century. Next important writer is William Cowper. William Cowper was a notable poet of the Augustan Age and 18th century literature, renowned for his reflective and often melancholic poetry. And here is a list of some of his key works. First is The Task, perhaps Cowper's most celebrated work. The Task is a long philosophical poem that reflects on the role of the poet and the poet's engagement with the natural world. It explores themes of a rural life, religion, and moral and intellectual value of poetry. Next is The Only Hymns, a collection of hymns written by Cowper and John Newton. These hymns are still included in their many hymns and are known for their devotional and spiritual themes. Next is Epitaph on Hare, a short poem in which Cowper pays tribute to the beloved pet hare, using it as a reflection on life, death, and nature. Next is John Gilpin, a humorous narrative poem that tells the story of a man named John Gilpin and his comic misadventures during a horseback ride. Next important work is The Castaway, a melancholic poem that reflects on the idea of being cast adrift at sea, both literally and metaphorically. Next is To Mary, a poem that in which Cowper expresses his deep affection for his cousin and close friend Lady Mary Unwin. Next important work is The Moral Satires, a series of satirical poems in which Cowper addresses social and moral issues of the time with wit and insight. Friends, William Cowper's works are marked by their emotional depth, reflective nature, and engagement with the moral, religious, and philosophical themes. His poetry resonates with the readers of its exploration of the human condition and its relationship with the natural world and spirituality. That's all for this video, friends. We'll see you in the second part.